Today is October 5th, 2024, and I'm giving a talk to a group of students at Charles Drew University. It is about 6:30 in the morning. The talk is at 10. But I live in the Southern California area, and if I don't start now, because the place is in LA, if I don't start now, I will be late. So I'm leaving almost 3.5 hours before I actually give the talk, and it's actually just good practice to do that. One of the other reasons I set out so early on this foggy morning is because this was my very first keynote speech. I've given other talks at other events, but this is my first keynote speech, and I really wanted to make sure I got there early and got a feel of the lay of the land before the talk began. As you see on the GPS, with a few stops, we got there about an hour and a half before the actual talk. So we arrived an hour early, which I'm super excited about. But the building I'm actually going to, I'm confused about it. So this is again why going early to places is good, because then when things like this happen, like you don't know which of the buildings you're supposed to be in, you can find it. So let's go find it. A few minutes later, I did find the building, as well as a big picture of myself in the room where I was going to be giving the keynote. One of the things I actually did, which was actually expected for this trip, was get a photographer. I've never really had brand photography done. I've mostly taken pictures with my phone and a self-timer. But this time around, I wanted some professional pictures to kind of commemorate that it was my first keynote. And also to, as my speaking business is growing, because it is, to have some more professional shots of myself. So thank you, Olga. Olga was amazing. I found her on Snapper. Snapper is an app where you can book photographers. They are not sponsoring this video, by the way.
Our keynote speaker today is Dr. Gertrude Nantera. She's a scientific communications professional working currently for Thermo Fisher Scientific. She has a background of PhD in microbiology and immunology from Lewis Cass Temple University, also a bachelor's degree in nursing and biology. So without further ado, please give a warm clap clap.
Already kind of gave the spiel of my educational background, but I do want to start with a story. All right, so this is a screenshot of my transcript from undergrad, my first degree in biology. And once upon a time, I wanted to be a pediatrician. That's what I wanted to do. I had been saying this since I was 18 years old. And I went to college, and you can see that I majored in biology. I had a pre-medical concentration. I had good grades. I graduated summa cum laude, so everything was going well, right? However, towards the end of my bachelor's degree, I began to think, do I really want to go to med school? There were two things standing in my way, two big things. The first thing was it was a lot of money, right? It was going to be a lot of money. And look at when I graduated. I graduated in 2006. It's gotten worse since then, by the way. And, right? Inflation has taken over, and it's more expensive than it was even at that time. And so it was expensive, and I couldn't justify paying so much money just to get a degree. And then the second thing was I was an international student. And for most medical schools in the US at that time, I don't know about now, international students were kind of low on the pecking order, because people who were citizens or permanent residents were always considered above international students. So these two things stood in my way of going to med school. Thankfully, I wasn't one of those people that said med school or die, right? So as I began to think about my options, I decided instead of going to med school, I'd pursue a PhD. But before I did that, though, I took a bit of a detour and got a degree in nursing. It was an accelerated program for I think 18 months after my bachelor's. So I did end up getting a second bachelor's degree in 2008, and then went on in 2009 to get my PhD. I finished that in 2015. So that has been my educational journey. And maybe you are listening to me today and you have a goal in mind, right? You have a picture in mind of what the future looks like. I definitely had been thinking I was going to be a pediatrician from the time I was 18 years old. But by the time I was 22, 23, I was like, it's okay, I don't want to pursue that dream anymore, and it's okay to let some dreams die. All right? Nothing is subtracted from you or your life when you allow some dreams to die. Just remember that. After that, I got a postdoc at UC San Diego, worked there for about 3 years. And then one day, our boss calls us into an office and he says, funding for this research has run out. And so, unfortunately, all of you have to go. And I had to leave. I was a PhD without a job. And I thought I'd figure it out and, you know, within 3 months I'd get another job. But unfortunately for me, I did not get another job until 2019, at the end of 2019. So this happened, job loss happened May of 2018, didn't get another job until the end of 2019. So a year and a half. Right, so I went through that low point of job loss and trying to figure it out. And this is another place where I want to share a lesson. That things happen in life doesn't make you a failure, right? So this job loss era allowed me to reinvent myself. I was not done with my PhD, being laid off from a job, not because of anything I did. And now I had to figure it out. I had to, the most embarrassing thing, by the way, is when you have all these degrees and somebody asks you, why are you jobless? And you're like, I don't know. I don't have an explanation. And I'm sorry that I look like a failure in your eyes, but I really did feel like a failure at this time. However, during this time, I have a son who is now 11. At that time, he was about 5 or so. So I did a lot of stay-at-home mothering. I had a lot of respect for those people, but it's not for me. A lot of respect, a lot of respect. It's a lot of work. By the way, working mothers also do a lot of work, so it's still a lot of work. It's like twice the work. And then I was freelance writing, and it was during this time, because up until this point, I had been thinking, oh, I'd be a researcher, maybe become a professor, something like that, look cute in outfits and go stand before teachers and teach them. But that did not happen. So I began to freelance write. And so my advice to you is, if you ever face a time in your life where you are unemployed or it's a difficult season or for some reason you cannot work, fill it up with stuff. A popular piece of advice, which I take issue with, is finding your passion and doing what you're passionate about. Yes, that is true. However, what if your passion is not rewarded by society? So let's think about it. You have people, let's say you have a physician, right? Physician who has definitely gone to school, paid his or her dues, and now is making $500,000, right? It's being rewarded in that way. And then somebody with the same amount of experience, let's say in art, like objectively, you just tell me, right? You don't have to tell anybody, we don't have to tell anybody out there. Who do you think is going to make more over their lifetime?
The doctor.
Right. So I'm not even insulting art, right? But if society doesn't reward your passion, it's likely you'll end up broke. And that's unfortunate. That's not you, it's just society doesn't reward it, unfortunately. Right. Today, Olga is here and our photographer is here and they're doing amazing work. They should be compensated really well for their jobs. Unfortunately, society doesn't reward them as highly as they should. Right. And so while finding your passion is a good idea, right, if you throw your passion in with some of the other things I'm going to talk about, you'll end up crafting a career that makes sense for you, but still allows you to operate in your strengths and in your passions, okay? So let's get started with that. When you decide, when you get to that point where you're choosing a career path you think you want to be on long term, right? I really want you to reflect deeply about that path, all right? And you may want to think about things like your personal interests. And this is where programs like these are helpful, because you get to travel, you get to, you know, be in rooms like this or be in conferences and get exposed to experiences. And so you get to pinpoint what you like and what you don't like. Please pay attention to that, right? Don't kind of dismiss it and say, oh, well, they pay well, so I might as well. If it pays well and you hate going to work every day, you will get sick. you will drive yourself crazy, and you don't want to do that, right? What I didn't talk about earlier on when I was talking about being in research was, even though I was good at it, I published papers, you can go find my papers online, I published papers, I was good at it, I did not like it. One day, and I'll tell you, the pinnacle of this was me driving to work one day, sitting in my car, and not wanting to get out of the vehicle. I called my mom, and I started crying. She said, "Why are you crying?" I said, "I don't want to go to work." She said, "Why don't you want to go to work?" "I hate this job." Okay, because I had not really sat down to think. I had a PhD, I was doing research, I was publishing papers, and I hated it. Right? So if you just think about how good it looks on somebody else and not how good it looks on you, you're going to hate your job. Right? And I don't want that for you because I've been through it and it's horrible. Alright, so think about your personal interests. Think about the kind of work environment you want to be in. Especially now after COVID, you have options of remote work, right? Do you want to work remotely? Do you want a hybrid role? Do you want to work in person? Do you like traveling? There are jobs that allow you to travel all the time. Do you hate traveling? You really have to think about that. If you have an impact you want to make, you want to think about that as well. And then let's not forget money. I mean, listen, bills are not paid with passion. Bills are not paid with passion. Bills are paid with cold cash, right? So think about that. Like, where do you want to live? How much money do you want to make? Does that professional path allow you to make it while still, considering these things? Your life goals, right? I have a child, and there's nothing that changes your life like having a child and realizing that now you don't make the money just for you. Like, another person depends on you. And if you don't make money, and that's what killed me about being unemployed, is that I had a person who depended on me and I couldn't afford to do certain things for him. If it was just me, by myself, thinking about I could eat ramen all day. You can't feed a child ramen all day. When you begin to really reflect deeply about what an ideal career looks like for you, it will help you understand the things that bring you satisfaction and fulfillment in your professional life. And I want to say this, that this is not fixed. If you do something for 10 years, you really enjoy it, but 10 years later you're like, I think I want to change this. It's okay. You can go through the process again and think about it. Right. So then you begin to profile. So you've thought about all of these things, you've pondered, and you begin to profile your strengths, your skills, your experiences, and how these can help you on the career path you want to go on. So this is how it played out in my life. When I was in the middle of being unemployed and still applying for researcher positions but not getting any, even though I hated being a researcher, I began to ask myself, well, what other career path could I pursue that allows me to use the fact that I love writing? I absolutely love writing and I love teaching, right? And I love explaining things. So what career path allows me to do this? Pays well, allows me to write, allows me to explain things to people. And then I came across medical communications and I'm like, communications, medical? Wait a minute, can you do this? Can this really happen? You know how when you come across something and you're like, can I really have everything I want? That's really how it was for me. I could leverage my scientific and medical background with the fact that I love teaching and writing and merge that into a career in medical communications. And I found a job doing exactly that. And then, as you think about this, I now really, I want you to prioritize. I hope you're going through this exercise. But now think about the things that are most important to you, right? Your work-life balance. Do you want to close work at 4 and come home and take your children to soccer practice? Do you thrive on being, or maybe you don't want to do soccer, okay? Or football, whatever, or tennis, running. Or do you thrive? There's some people that absolutely want to be high-powered people and work until 9 in the night. That's them, right? So really think about work-life balance, because the thing you don't want to do, I heard something this week and I thought it was disappointing, but I also thought it was indicative of the person's generation. I think there are generations where sacrificing your family for work was kind of rewarded, and I don't think that's a good idea because some of those people regret it. They regret not spending time with people that meant a lot to them and spending more time at work than the people that actually cared about them. You know, so think about that. Ethical practices, right? Maybe you have a deep concern for the environment or a specific issue. Think about that and prioritize if that's what you want to work. I remember somebody told me, I want to really work in, she wanted to really do something social good, but then it allowed her to use her skills as a psychologist, and then it did something else, like 3 different things. I'm like, that's amazing. Tell me when you find that job. And sometimes you may be very surprised. You'll just, because you set that intention, you begin looking and you find something exactly like that. So really think what's on the top of your list. Sometimes you may not be able to check everything off your list, right? But you'll be able to check the things, some of the things, and the things that are most important to you. This is why I'm saying prioritize what's important to you. I'm done giving the talk. It went really well. I'm very, very excited about it. I hope it inspired people. And yeah, I feel very grateful. When I started this, I never thought I would give a keynote talk. I never thought the story of me being unemployed would inspire other people. Being unemployed and then picking myself back up, you know. And I just want to encourage you, you know, I've said on this channel many times before that you being unemployed does not diminish your self-worth. Okay, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't.